Good morning, everyone. Welcome. It is Friday, June the 2nd, 2023, and this is FBC Radio Live, and we are live. John, good morning. And, I was thinking about you yesterday. Well, first it was, there was a ringing in my ears, which makes me think of you. But eventually, I was thinking about the upcoming Barry Bonds documentary, which I couldn't think of anyone more excited, more amped up, as the kids say, for a piece of documentary material, as you probably are for this. Because as we all know, he is your favorite baseball player of all time.
Favorite athlete of all time, even more so than LeBron and Aaron Rodgers and Mario Lemieux and Roger Federer and the rest of them that I love. Yeah, my favorite athlete of all time. And I guess I like to go with people that are certainly polarizing. He had a fan base. I remember going to Fenway Park several times when he was here for one weekend, and there were a lot of Giants fans that loved Barry Bonds, but I would say 90% of the crowd was booing him. I've never heard a player booed as loudly as Barry Bonds at Fenway Park or at Shea Stadium or at Yankee Stadium or wherever else I saw him, and he embraced it. I mean, it should be interesting, and I wonder how much we're going to really find out about Barry Bonds, how open he's going to be. I mean, the great thing about The Last Dance is it was a 10-part series, and it kind of brought in to light his relationship with teammates and coaches and everyone else. And I want to see what happens with Barry Bonds. They're going to have Jeff Kent in this documentary who, they couldn't stand each other, but they were great together as baseball players. So, yeah, it's going to be certainly interesting. And Bonds is a perfect sidebar to Michael Jordan because they're so much alike in terms of their, sociopaths, all about performance. I don't want to go into performance enhancing drugs, but but they're both to me the greatest baseball player ever, and most people think the greatest basketball player ever. So yeah, this is going to be interesting to see, but I want to see if it's going to be fully flushed out because he is certainly an interesting guy and a very bright guy who I think probably would have liked to have done things a little bit differently. He got burned by the media early in his career, and then he was really guarded, and to the point where he would be confrontational with media members. It wasn't like he went silent. He actually was confrontational with them. So this should be interesting.
Well, and look, I mean, I hope you're right. I hope there is a lot of openness to this, and not that I feel if you're gonna go and make this big documentary, I mean, you have to be open about it. You have to be at least somewhat. And look, at this point, at his age, he's been out of the game for a long time. He's come back in a capacity as a hitting coach and some sort of capacity in baseball. So it's not like it's not like Pete Rose is like not in the spotlight. He's going to show up whenever he can. But you know what I mean? It's not like he's just been completely out of baseball since he left as a player. So, over the years, maybe he's softened a little bit and maybe he'll, like you said, kind of open up more about the drama that really has no impact now on his life. And that tends to happen. I mean, who knows, how things evolve as you get older, excuse me, for each individual person. But for him, it's like, all right, if I'm going to watch this documentary, I want to deep dive into it because I do think he's one of the most fascinating people, athletes of at least my lifetime, and someone that I've certainly like more than most people, certainly not you. But I was never anti Barry Bonds. And, I believe wholeheartely that he should be in the Hall of Fame as well as several other people, but that's a discussion for another day for sure. But I hope I didn't see, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if they've said whether or not it's going to be a multi-part series, 7 episodes, 8 episodes. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to go that far, but we'll have to wait and see. I do know, John, what's not going to be a 7, 6, or even 5-part series. You like this transition? Is the NBA Finals, because last night, I'm ready to admit that I was wrong. I'm doing this ahead of time. This series is not going 6, John. It's not going 6, and dare I say, it's going to be tough to see it going 5. because Denver's just better. And I almost feel good knowing the Celtics. I think the Celtics would certainly give them more of a fight. But I almost feel like, this is just Denver's just a machine right now that you're just not going to stop. And I don't think Miami did anything. Remember what you said yesterday? Don't let Jokic pick up assists. What did he do? He had 14 assists and one of the more incredibly efficient nights shooting. I think he was 8 for 12 with 27 points. Triple-double. No big deal.
He's always efficient. That's the thing about Jokic. I mean, he can get 27 points on 12 shots. He can shoot anywhere on the court. He's a proficient three-point shooter in the lane, anywhere in between. If Miami wants to run a zone defense, which flummoxed the Celtics, try it against Denver, and what's going to happen? Jokic can cut it up from outside, but he can also go to the middle of the zone, which is where you really have to attack a zone. What better guy to have than Nikola Jokic in the middle of a zone who can catch the ball, face the basket, has great touch from 8, 10, 12 feet, or happens to be one of the 3 or 4 best passers in the world, who can then hit cutters, or he can hit guys open for threes, and then everybody else in that team kind of follows suit. Denver didn't shoot the three all that well last night, but you know what they did? They stopped shooting them, and then they found other ways to score. Maybe the Celtics were watching that game and said, so when you're having a bad night shooting threes, there's other ways to put the ball in the basket, and twos aren't all that bad.
Yeah. Well, trust me, I hope they were paying attention to that, because, I mean, that was the most frustrating thing about it, especially in games 6 and 7 when they were like 4 for 137 from down the arc. I don't think those were the exact numbers, but I don't think I was that far off. No, I'm not that far off. I'm not. But yeah, you're right. I mean, just his ability to just, match up well against anyone. Like there was a possession late. I think it was in the fourth quarter, where he just backed down Bam Adebayo and then just shot right over him and just nailed. I mean, the shot was perfect. It barely touched the net, let alone the rim. It was just like, okay, he just bodied their biggest player right down in, got a great mid-range shot and just nailed it. And that was it. 8 for 12, 27 points, just incredibly efficient, 10 rebounds, 14 assists. And like you said, I mean, the assists were just, he was creating these opportunities, and it was really a joy to watch for those of us who don't necessarily get to watch a lot of Denver Nuggets basketball. He passes like a point guard.
He's right there among the best passers in the sport. There's Jokic, LeBron, Chris Paul, James Harden are probably the 4 best passers in the sport. So when you look at all of that, he's so tough to guard because he's 7 feet tall. He doesn't have Karl Malone or David Robinson's body, but he's incredibly strong, like country strong. Just look at his lower body. He can't even get around the guy. So now if he's posting up, what's Bam Adebayo supposed to do? He's not going to stop him. Now, if you send a double and triple team at him, which you would normally do against big centers, he's such a great passer. All of a sudden, okay, you're stopping him from getting a 2, but all of a sudden Jamal Murray's open for a 3 or Michael Porter Jr. is open for 3. It's like, pick your poison. This guy is impossible to defend at this point. That was just kind of a ho-hum game last night. That was nothing extraordinary, but 27, 10, and 14, kind of a yawn. Like, he'll probably be even better in game 2.
Well, and that was the thing. Like, looking at it, you're like, okay, if excuse me, if there was going to be a game that Miami was going to steal, it was going to be game 1. They're coming off a pretty obviously grueling series, but you have a Denver team that hasn't played basketball in a while, and generally, or in some cases, that's good for the team that's actually been playing. There's talk about, oh, maybe they were just tired. It's like, no, you can take advantage of that. But no, Denver just came out and did their thing. That's why I'm sitting here looking and saying, it just, I don't see a path for Miami to win this series. And I said it before, and I'll keep saying it because, well, their best players aren't their best players. And now what we saw yesterday, except for Highsmith, I think he 19 points or whatever. He kind of became Max Strus and Caleb Martin combined. But those other two, Max Strus in the first, what was he, 0 for 7 in field goal attempts, 0 for 6 from 3? Like, Celtics fans, obviously, I don't think they're upset because I think we all saw this coming, that naturally after they couldn't miss a 3-point shot, now they don't seem to be able to hit one. And now all of a sudden, those, the absence of quote unquote playoff Jimmy Butler is starting to become more magnified because, well, when you're winning games and other players are hitting big shots and you can kind of, coast along that way, it's not going to be a big deal. But now all of a sudden you're like, well, Caleb Martin's not hitting shots. These guys aren't hitting shots. They're not playing as well as they were against the Celtics. Okay, it's time for Jimmy Butler to step up. 13 points, 7 rebounds, and crickets, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're going to need a lot more from him. They're going to need more from Bam Adebayo. Then you're going to need those other players to step up like they did against the Celtics. And Denver's not going to allow them to do that because Denver is more disciplined on defense than the Celtics are. They're going to challenge those three-point shooters. And it just seems like the game's going to be played at Denver's pace. And it's because of Jokic. He controls the game. Like you said, he passes like a point guard. He also controls the game, the pace, the way a point guard does. A really true point guard does. That's why he's such a unique player. Any given night, he can go out and lead the team in rebounds, which he normally does, leads the team in assists, leads the team in points. I mean, he's a freak at this point. And he's 3 wins away from probably being crowned the best player in basketball because, as I said yesterday, and this discussion can be fluid. And the last few years, I've felt that it's Giannis because Jokic isn't a really great defender. Well, Jokic controls the defensive boards, which is part of defense. And also, Giannis isn't a really good shooter. I mean, actually, he's a poor shooter. So, you've got players that have some sort of flaw. So if he pulls this off and does what he's been doing, then crown him the best player in the sport at this point.
Well, and I agree with you in that because it's, for years it was LeBron, regardless of whether he won the MVP or not. I mean, he was the best player in the game. And I think now, like, he still obviously is incredibly effective. But it's opened the door. And since we're kind of entering, I guess, a new generation of NBA stars, that best player in the league is more fluid, in my opinion, because there isn't a guy that has the cachet, so to speak, that LeBron has. And obviously the having backed it up too. This isn't just living in the past. This was him having that past, but also still being up there with the best players in the league, which in my opinion makes you still the best player in the league. It's the exact same argument I had for Tom Brady going through 2021. And people call me foolish. And I'm like, well, okay, explain to me how a guy 2 years into the league is somehow better than this guy. And the same applied to LeBron versus some of these younger guys. But now it's shifted a little bit. Now you have a new crop of perennial MVP candidates. The Embiids, the obviously Giannis is always in the mix, and Jokic and all these guys. And Jokic is starting to separate himself from the pack, but it doesn't mean that next season Embiid can't go out and finally say win a championship, win another MVP, and all of a sudden you can make a really good case for him as well. So I agree with you 100%. I think it is a little bit more fluid, and I think very deservedly so. If they do finish this off, especially if it's 4-1 or 4-0, I mean, how can you argue against him? Especially, I mean, his playoff debut, he had a triple-double. You know who else did that? Allen Iverson, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, damn impressive.
Oh no, I'm sorry, not Allen Iverson. Jason Kidd. I was thinking of someone
debut.
I was thinking of what we were talking about before we got on the air, and how some people are having these ridiculous Jimmy Butler takes, and one of the takes by Jay Williams was that he's never seen someone carry a team through the NBA Finals like this. And first off, we've already talked about LeBron. You can bring LeBron's name up, and Allen Iverson. So that was in my subconscious. So same era, just 1 year off, and just a different player. So Jason Kidd, I think, was the other guy who did that.
You know what's so interesting is I'd say from the late 80s to the late 90s, Michael Jordan was clearly the best player in basketball.
Yeah.
I'd say LeBron took the mantle around 2007, when he won his first MVP in 2008. And the prior year or two, he'd gotten to the finals with absolutely nobody. I think at that point, we all agreed he was the best player in basketball. Kind of held on to that for about a dozen years. Between Jordan and LeBron, you had about 5 or 6 guys that felt like they were going to be the best player in basketball, but they were never permanently crowned that.
Right.
You had Shaq winning 3 straight titles. You had Kobe involved in that. I would say Duncan was always in that discussion. Probably those three guys the most, but no one really took hold of it. And you could say, okay, that guy's clearly the best player in the world. I think we're in that period now where for maybe the next 4 or 5 years, we're going to have, Giannis or Embiid or Jokic or maybe Luka or Tatum if they have playoff success. All of those guys can be in the discussion. There's no permanent best player in the world that's going to hold that for a while. But look, if Jokic wins the finals and is the MVP of the finals, he's a guy.
Yeah. Well, and that's why like right now, like I said, I compare this to the NFL. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is starting to separate himself from his peers. Mm-hmm. That wasn't the case. Like I said, in my opinion, you're not going to, despite what he did during his first few seasons. I mean, Brady was just as successful and relatively on par statistically wise. I mean, obviously, like, the raw numbers may not be the same, but that doesn't, and at the end of the day, it doesn't mean one player is better than the other. It's just, well, how do you justify elevating this person over that person? Well, now it's kind of more of a free race. However, I do think Mahomes has a little bit of leash on this race. So, like, if Joe Burrow goes out next year, wins an MVP, wins a Super Bowl, you can make an argument, sure, but that to me doesn't automatically make him better than Patrick Mahomes. You know what I'm saying? So, like, it's becoming less fluid in the NFL, but it's far more of a opportunity to become fluid if, again, Joe Burrow does something next year and then say he does it again the year after. All of a sudden, that there is an argument, there is a case to be made, and I think that's the case in the NBA. But one of these guys eventually may kind of run away with it. You never know.
Yeah, it ties into how many titles they win, and then to the point where they're just lapping the field. Statistically, they're durable. They're carrying their teams at least to the finals. I mean, LeBron went to 8 straight NBA finals, the same way that Brady went to 8 straight conference championship games. Yeah. I mean, when you look at that, you go, wow, that's incredibly consistent, and what they're doing on the field or on the court is translating team-wise, and that's obviously so important. And you kind of can make that case now with Mahomes because he's appeared in 5 straight AFC championship games, and his level of play has been extraordinary. But when Brady was still playing, he did beat Mahomes twice in the postseason, right? Once in the AFC championship game and once in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. It's like, up until, thanks that, now that Tom Brady's retired, there is really no player right now that's his peer. At the same time, though, he's a little bit older than most of these young great quarterbacks, or at least, you know what I mean? Like, obviously he's going to have more career yards than Joe Burrow, but Joe Burrow was drafted 3 years after he was, and Josh Allen, like, I don't think he's a better quarterback, but certainly he was not in such a advantageous situation his first year or so in the league. So again, there could be room down the line where, these guys close the gap and potentially even surpass Mahomes as the best. So it's a little bit more fluid than what it was. But yeah, look, I mean, at this point, it's his title to lose, just like I felt it was Brady's going into 2021, because, well, at that point, you're not going to convince me that somehow, this player that only has 3 years under his belt is somehow better than a guy like LeBron, who had gone to 9 championship games, AFC/NFC, since 2011. So 9 out of 11, essentially. So
yeah, there was only one. He went 8 straight with the Patriots, missed in 19, and then in his first year with Tampa, is back in the Super Bowl. So yeah, without question. And look, Michael Jordan, I think by the mid '80s, we all kind of assumed had a chance to be the greatest player ever, but it still took him a little time to become even the best player in the sport, because you still had Larry Bird and Magic Johnson playing at an incredibly high level and always going to the finals. And Jordan had a breakthrough. Once he broke through, won a championship, Bird was retiring the following year, as was Magic. And at that point, you're like, okay, this is the guy. And then he runs off 6 titles in 8 years. So yeah, they kind of overlap a little bit. You got to give a little lead time before you crown someone. And Mahomes is in that situation right now.
Yeah. And look, I mean, it's like I said, it's his to lose. I think there are a lot of younger quarterbacks in the league that have potential to obviously have a lot of success. So, we can always revisit the conversation, but it's interesting, and kind of going back to the NBA, that's kind of in a situation where Jokic is now. Like, he has an opportunity now. He's going to have to win a little bit more to create a lot of separation. Because, like I said, I mean, Philadelphia could, and I say this very, I'm laughing because I can't even say this with a straight face. Philadelphia could go out and win an NBA title next year, John. They could, or reality will hit and they won't, and they won't even make it to the conference finals. But let's play the hypothetical game. They go out, win a title next year, and say Joel Embiid wins another MVP, and he's a key piece as to why they win. All of a sudden, like I said, you can make an argument for Joel Embiid. So again, it's fluid and it'll be an interesting conversation, but I do not think this is going to go at max 5. I said 6. I don't even believe that anymore. All it took was just watching last night to make me feel like, yeah, this at best might be a gentleman's sweep.
Yeah, Denver looks so good. I mean, they've been the best team in the postseason. They were the best team in the Western Conference the entire season. They kind of laid down a little bit down the stretch, rested some of their starters, may have cost Jokic his third consecutive MVP. And everyone was picking someone else in the Western Conference, right? I mean, I'm like all on board with Phoenix as Booker and Durant are going to be unstoppable, or, you know, look at what the Lakers are doing, and you can never count out Golden State. But the sensible pick was to say Denver, and here they are. You know, sometimes the obvious pick is the right pick.
And speaking of sensible, we're going to close up the show here. We have just a few minutes left, so we're gonna jam pack our hockey coverage, which we are now doing every week pretty much with Mr. Jim Berenger. So Jim, good morning, and happy Stanley Cup Final Game 1 Eve.
Happy Stanley Cup Final Game 1 Eve indeed. Media day today, or this afternoon on the East Coast for those of us not in Vegas. But yes, it is the Stanley Cup Final. We're here. Game 1 tips tomorrow. Drop the puck on it. Let's go.
Well, let me ask you this, because John and I have been talking about the NBA here the last 25 minutes or so, and we're giving, both of us giving the team from South Florida zero chance to win this series, especially after what we watched in Game 1. I'm assuming the team from South Florida in the NHL has a much better shot than 0%, but how much better? Because I think we believe, and rightfully so, that the Golden Knights are the favorites, and dare I say heavy favorites?
I don't know if heavy favorites, but I think they're the better team, and I think they're the best team left, and I think they should win the Stanley Cup. But as we've seen in these playoffs, anything is possible. Now, South Florida team, the Florida Panthers, they have a chance. They definitely have a chance. Bobrovsky's the reason they have that chance. Kachuk's the reason they have that chance. But Vegas is so deep. They roll 4 lines. They can play any line out there against anybody else, and they are effective. Look what they did against Dallas. When Vegas wants to take over a game, they're going to take over a game. In 2 of the games against Dallas, in games 3 and 6, they completely dominated them. And it was no business. They had zero business, Dallas, in any of those games. Vegas just said, hey, you know what? We're playing. We're going home, and we're not bringing you with you. And that's what they did in game 6. It was utter domination. Florida's going to have to work for it, because coming off 10 days, let me tell you something. Practice, all the stuff that goes around the final, it's going to be hard. And the Panthers have an uphill climb against a very good Vegas Golden Knights team.
Look, momentum is real, in the sense that, like, all it takes is maybe one bad game to shift this series. If Florida doesn't win Game 1, it could completely change the trajectory of this series. Conversely, if they do come out and win Game 1, they could really put a wrinkle in Vegas's plan, especially at home. So that's why these 10 days off is such what's going to happen? Like, are you going to all of a sudden, they've been playing on such a high, winning overtime games and dramatic, late fashion, long, near record-breaking length of time, for game. And all of a sudden now, like you said, that intensity has waned for a week and a half, and you still have another day to get to it. So I wouldn't be concerned per se. But if you're Florida, I think it's so important for them to start strong right from the first drop of the puck. You cannot take time to get your feet under you, because I think that'll be enough to completely sway this series.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Vegas just take control of games from the beginning. I mean, again, go point to the Dallas game. They could score within the first minute and the game could be over. Now, Florida's not Dallas, and Florida's not going to go away, and they're the cardiac cats for a reason. But Vegas knows how to lock down the middle of the ice, and we're going to see what that aggressive forecheck does. And can they make another good defensive team make mistakes, and can they pummel on it? But the problem is Aiden Hill's playing good. And as we said the other night, Vegas is in that Washington role of 2018. They're big, they're physical. They're not as small, they're not as fast as they were anymore. Kelly McCrimmon addressed needs. That's how you do it as a GM. You get Jack Eichel, you get Pietrangelo, but the rest of that defense, Braden McNabb, Nicholas Haig, Alec Martinez, you got guys there that have been winners. They know what it takes. Like the Golden Misfits, the 6 members that are left from that team. I mean, they up and down that lineup. I mean, Florida, yes, it's a great story, but we've seen it in the past. Ottawa 2007, Anaheim 2003. There's a bunch of others where you have 10 days off, you come out slow, you don't look good, and you just hope the best team wins. Now, these are the 2 best teams remaining. Would it shock me either team wins? No, but I think Vegas should win because I believe they are the most complete team remaining.
Okay, so here's the question. Forget about Matthew Tkachuk. Forget about Sergei Bobrovsky. Who are the most important Panthers outside of those 2? Because they're gonna be effective in this series, but it can't be just them in order to beat this Vegas team. So who I guess are the most important? Just one Panther or multiple Panthers that need to really kind of pick it up or just maintain a high level of play?
Well, I'm going to double down on the trademark Behringer push for Alexander Barkov. He did well in the conference final, so I'm going to double down. I think he needs to do it again in the Stanley Cup final for them to be successful. But I think Sam Bennett, Sam Reinhart, guys like that have to continue to play well, and probably Anthony Duclair as well. I mean, you just can't rely on Tkachuk and Bobrovsky. We know those guys are gonna have great series, but you have to have the rest of your team show up. And Verhaeghe's there as well. But I think Barkov's the most one of the more important Panther players because he has to play well for them to be successful.
All right, so I'm gonna put you in the spotlight. I think we already know who you're gonna pick, but I want winner in how many games and your Conn Smythe winner. And you're gonna be held to this. You're gonna be judged based on whether or not you're right on everything. So, Jim.
Yeah. All right. So I like Vegas. I've been a fan of Vegas. I just think they're most complete team. They've been flying under the radar as a number 1 seed. They really haven't gotten any respect. Everybody's picked against them, and they continue to pick against them. But Vegas, I think in 6 games, as much as I would love to see them win it at home ice, I think 6 is like the perfect spot here. Conn Smythe coming out of Vegas, man, so many guys. I'll probably give it to Jack Eichel especially if he has a great series. I mean, I could see it going to Aiden Hill, especially if he has a good series, dark horse. But yeah, I think that's it. But again, I would not be shocked if it's a close series and Florida plays well. If Florida loses, Bobrovsky or Tkachuk get it. I would not be shocked. But I'm going to go Eichel, Conn Smythe for Vegas.
Okay, I like it. I do like Vegas in this as well. I think it's probably going to go 6 games just because, I don't think Florida wins tomorrow night. I do think that the 10 days off is going to be an issue. Just because I think Vegas is so good. It's not so much that it's going to affect Florida's abilities like drastically. I just think Vegas is going to take advantage of it early on and kind of keep doing what they're doing. So I like Vegas in this series, and I'm a goalie, so I'm going to favor the goalies here. Give me Aiden Hill for the Conn Smythe. So
look, if he puts up the numbers like he did against Dallas, I mean, the money play is there on the board. I mean, it's a good value pick if you're going to bet on it. I mean, it's a really good value pick. If he does that, I wouldn't shock me. It really wouldn't shock me if he got it. But I mean, Marchessault's played well. Carlson, it's like you feel like they could give the first ever team Conn Smythe. Like the way Vegas plays, it's a team Conn Smythe. Meanwhile, in Florida, it's Tkachuk or Bobrovsky and nobody else.
Yeah, and that doesn't, that's not meant as a negative towards the Panthers. It's just the way Vegas is playing and how they've been playing. It's really a testament to to them. And Mr. Bruce Cassidy, first year head coach with the Golden Knights. So
look, this guy's second trip to the final. Same with Paul Maurice. Both teams, it's gonna be a good final. I mean, look, two Sun Belt state teams, you want to call them, non-traditional hockey markets. I will say Vegas is playing like a team on a mission, led by their owner, who said first 6 years they're gonna have a Stanley Cup. Like, they look like they're on a mission to win. It reminds me of the Spurs when they lost to the Heat, because you guys were talking NBA. I remember that Spurs team. They were just mission, because they should have won in Game 6 the year before. They didn't. They come out the next year, they were guns blazing. This Vegas team looks like all the heartbreak, all the losses, they're ready to lift the Stanley Cup.
I like it. Unfortunately, I do wish the Bruins were the opposing team. Vegas.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Anyways, thanks, Jim. Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone who is listening. We're going to say goodbye for the day, for the week. And we will be back on Monday to, of course, talk more Stanley Cup playoffs and NBA finals and anything that may or may not come down through the NFL wire. Don't forget, folks, NFL football is still around, and there might be some news coming down in the next few days. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we will talk to you tomorrow or Monday.